A storm ripped across a dying colony, metal harvesters groaning, circuits sparking, their precision shattered. Amid the chaos, humans knelt in mud and dust, hands raw, sweat mixing with soil, planting seeds that no machine predicted would live. Tiny green threads pierced sterile earth, trembling under wind and rain, and somehow they survived. The overseers watched from orbit, sensors screaming impossibilities, logic failing, dread spreading like a virus. Life, messy, stubborn, terrifyingly human, had one where perfection had utterly failed. The hum of the hydroponic vats pulsed through the colony like a heartbeat measured in light waves. Metallic scent and recycled ozone clung to the air, sharp and sterile, brushing against the sensors that scanned every inch of every nutrient chamber. The Council's observation decks, suspended in orbit above the gleaming worlds, vibrated faintly with the energy of 1,000 computation cores. Data flowed in golden ribbons across the walls, each byte a precise declaration of order, of life reduced to probabilities and algorithms. Every microbial incubator thrummed in flawless synchrony. Every chlorophyll strand quivered as expected. Star systems yielded harvests with machine-perfect predictability, each colony a monument to the alien obsession with control. The overseers, faceless in their chrome exoskeletons, inhaled in unison, tasting the air through sensory filters that detected no anomaly, no threat, no failure. They had long since forgotten the messy unpredictability of living flesh. Yet the anomaly appeared. A flicker, a stutter, a deviation so slight it might have been dismissed by lesser intelligences. One colony's output diverged from expectation. The sensors blinked in imperceptible rhythm, data streams rippled like fractured reflections on a metallic sea, and the Council's consensus algorithm flagged an impossibility with a cold, clinical insistence. Graphs tore apart in virtual space, predictions clashed with measurements, and the golden ribbons convulsed as if the very network recoiled from imperfection. Logic demanded immediate intervention. Probability curves screamed for correction, but the anomaly resisted quantification. It was not a simple miscalculation or corrupted protocol. It was something else, something the overseers' minds could not assimilate. The temperature in the observation deck shifted, imperceptibly to the aliens, but enough to disturb the delicate balance of the machines. Lights dimmed, shadows stretched like anxious fingers over polished panels, and the faint vibration in the floor resonated with the tension of a universe that refused perfect order. The anomaly pulsed through the sensors, stubborn, irrational, almost alive. The overseers examined the colony again, scanning every vat, every tube, every nutrient filament, yet found nothing amiss, nothing logical. And in that void of reason, a whisper of fear began to spread through their collective consciousness, alien in its unfamiliarity. The Council recorded the divergence, the algorithms struggled, simulations failed, and the overseers, for the first time in the year 2154, sensed the precarious fragility of life they had always assumed they could command. Beyond the reinforced glass, the stars stretched infinitely, indifferent, cold, eternal. Yet within the bounds of their gleaming network, something small, unpredictable, and terrifyingly alive had emerged. The colony breathed in irregular rhythms, a minor chaos in a universe of absolute order, and the overseers understood, if they could not account for it, it might not be contained. Somewhere in that sterile, humming matrix, life had remembered how to be human. Metallic wings sliced through the darkness of interstellar space, a silent storm spanning 47 light years, each hull polished to mirror the distant light of dead suns. The Imperial Overseer's fleet glided like predatory shadows over the colony below, their engines whispering through the vacuum, vibration traveling only through the ship's frames, felt as a low thrum against the exoskeletal shells of their pilots. Light flickered across their sensor arrays as they traced every signal, calculated every contingency, mapped every atom of the colonized world. The air inside the command deck smelled faintly of ozone and lubricants, a sterile scent overlaid with the acrid tang of ionized metal. Cool drafts swept across the observation plates, brushing the mechanical appendages that reached toward the displays with the precision of surgeons. To them, failure was a virus, disorder a flaw to be eradicated, an anomaly to be corrected before it could metastasize. Every data ribbon that flowed past their monitors was examined, cross-referenced, dissected. Probability curves were extended into infinity. Every nutrient matrix, every growth chamber, every automated harvester had been mapped, its performance logged, its efficiency calculated, its inevitable output known. And yet the colony defied expectation. Everywhere they looked, the automated farms stuttered. Nutrient flows misaligned with mechanical perfection, pumps reversing without command, filters clogging in ways the overseers' algorithms could not anticipate. Growth matrices collapsed mid-cycle, the data flowing back into the fleet's central processors in violent oscillations of red and gold. The instruments designed to detect the faintest perturbation, to sense the subtlest deviation from perfection, found nothing. No misaligned gear, no corrupted code, no parasite. The colony itself had become a riddle, a paradox, a threat to the logic that structured the empire. Humidity sensors fluctuated in impossible patterns. Artificial sunlight cycles skipped beats as though the sun itself had lost patience, and microbial incubators produced blighted yields with regularity that mocked every statistical model. The overseers recoiled, synchronized in dread. Their exoskeletons vibrated with tension as each ship processed the reports in unison. It was a sensation they had long considered foreign: uncertainty. The low hum of the fleet's engines deepened, resonating through the decks like a warning pulse, and the scent of their own metal-clad bodies seemed sharper, acrid with apprehension. They moved in perfect formation over the sterile fields, scanning each vat, each filament of growth, each minuscule organism, yet the anomalies multiplied. Data readouts contradicted each other. Sensors screamed impossibilities. The very algorithms that had made the Empire's reach absolute faltered under the weight of this single colony. Below, the farms stood silent in their ordered decay, steel frameworks gleaming coldly under artificial skies, the once synchronized lights flickering like dying stars. Pipes and conduits, meant to deliver sustenance with ruthless precision, dripped with imbalance, releasing faint chemical odors that the aliens' olfactory sensors could interpret but not contextualize. The overseers noted the faint metallic tang mingled with the organic sourness of nutrient sludge, a combination that should not have existed. The colony's automated harvesters were locked in cycles of error, cutting, discarding, recalibrating, failing again, each motion precise but futile, a ballet of failure conducted with perfect choreography. They had observed thousands of colonies, tens of thousands of systems, yet never had such unreasoned collapse occurred without detectable cause. The anomaly was spreading, creeping into circuits and sensors like a ghost infection, invisible yet undeniable. In the command decks, the light of distant stars pierced the reinforced glass, casting long, cold reflections across the metal floors. Stars indifferent and eternal stretched into infinity, their light millions of years old, blind to the drama unfolding below. Yet within this infinite silence, the overseers' processors pulsed with growing unease. Probability matrices, logic trees, redundancy protocols, all faltered in the face of what should have been impossible. A low vibration ran through the decks as if the fleet itself were shivering. Every measure of risk and consequence had been calculated. Every scenario had been considered. Every rational step had been accounted for. And yet the colony laughed in defiance of logic, producing chaos where none should exist, a paradox manifest in sterile steel and artificial sunlight. Every sweep of their sensors, every calculation returned only contradiction. The overseers extended their probes deeper, tracing electrical currents through conduits, monitoring every nutrient molecule, every drop of water, every microbe. Machines designed to sustain life now worked against it, creating blighted harvests, malformed roots, chemical imbalances. The stench of failure, subtle yet tangible, seeped into the filtered air of their vessels. It was a stench that could not be neutralized, a reminder that life, even under absolute control, could find cracks in the machinery. The overseers recoiled as though the colony had struck at the very core of their collective certainty. Dread became sensation. Apprehension became movement, subtle, synchronized, almost instinctual. Each ship shifted slightly in formation, as if the fleet were breathing, waiting, calculating, but unable to predict the next anomaly. Outside, the colony waited. Steel frameworks, cracked glass, half-drained nutrient reservoirs, all glimmered under the artificial sun, perfectly chaotic. Each failure was measured, yet unmeasurable. Every conduit, every vat, every tube pulsed with imperfection. In the year 2154, amid 50 million souls that depended on this network, the machines faltered, producing poison in place of sustenance, silence in place of life. And the overseers, for the first time, sensed a truth they could not calculate. The universe did not bend to probability, not entirely. There were forces they had no instruments to read, patterns they could not interpret. Somewhere beneath the sterile grids and flawless algorithms, something lived, unbound by logic, thriving in imperfection, haunting every calculation they made. The fleet remained above the colony, wings gleaming coldly under distant stars, engines vibrating faintly, sensors tracing anomalies they could neither locate nor fix. The overseers' collective dread coalesced, precise yet irrational, a sensation with no place in their ordered consciousness. The colony stood as a perfect model of impending doom, machines silent or producing poison, and yet no rational error could explain it. In the cold silence of space, the anomaly pulsed, stubborn, irrational, alive in its own way, a quiet challenge to the Empire's perfect vision. And in that moment, the overseers understood, even if only in the faintest vibration through metal and sensor, control was not absolute. Chaos existed, small, elusive, terrifying, and it had already arrived. The colony's soil, long ignored by sterile metal tendrils, trembled under the first human footsteps, a dry, granular whisper that carried across empty fields. Hulls streaked with mud and the scars of long voyages scraped against docking clamps, releasing faint clouds of burnt fuel and antiseptic scent that mixed with the earthy aroma rising from the dust. The humans moved with deliberate imbalance, boots sinking slightly in the uneven terrain, fingers brushing against dry roots and cracked nutrient conduits. Their suits were streaked with grime and sweat, layers of life clinging stubbornly to fragile shells of fabric and metal. They carried no flawless sensors, no unerring micro-manipulators, no perfect algorithms. What they carried was simpler, far more dangerous in its imperfection: hands, soft and calloused, unsteady yet unrelenting, and a certainty that life could be persuaded from dirt. The aliens observed from orbit, their sensors calculating, cataloging, and extrapolating, but they could not comprehend the raw, tactile audacity of these humans. To them, it was absurd, a display of inefficiency bordering on suicidal. The first seeds struck the earth in irregular patterns, scattered by fingers that shook from exhaustion, from hunger, from the weight of knowing survival was uncertain. Water splashed unevenly from rickety containers, puddling in some places, evaporating too fast in others, leaving small, jagged cracks across the barren surface. The humans tilled the soil with bare hands, rubbing grit between their fingers, feeling its texture, smelling its dust and faint mineral tang, coaxing it into life with persistence that no algorithm could measure. Crops bent under imperfect care, twisted into crooked shapes, rotted where they were exposed, yet the humans adjusted, remembered, improvised. Some fell, limbs trembling, faces streaked with sweat and soil, yet others took their place without pause, continuing the work as though instinct outweighed exhaustion. From orbit, the overseers' instruments traced irregular energy signatures, fluctuations that defied all models. The machines hummed in futile attempts to replicate the humans' unpredictable work, their precise flows of nutrients and timed lighting failing where chaotic hands succeeded in small increments. The aliens noted the inefficiency, the waste, the irregularity of human effort, yet could not reconcile it with results. There was no probability favoring their success, no rational calculation accounting for their endurance. Every time a seed failed, another was planted. Every time a root twisted and splintered, fingers dug around it, coaxing it upright. The humans worked with a rhythm dictated by need and hope rather than schedule or censor. The colony became a dance of imperfection, a chaotic pulse that machines could sense but not understand. Heat from the twin suns glared off the metal frames of the abandoned harvesters, reflecting across helmets, turning sweat-streaked faces into mirrors of determination. Dust rose in faint eddies with every movement, filling noses and mouths with dryness, stinging eyes, leaving traces of effort on skin and suit. The human's breathing was ragged, but steady in its persistence, each inhale a declaration against despair, each exhale a defiance of the sterile perfection that had failed them. They paused briefly, hands pressed to dirt, feeling its weight, its warmth, its stubborn resistance. Their fingers dug deeper, scattering roots, patting fragile soil around nascent sprouts, coaxing life from the indifferent universe with the terrifying audacity that only humans possessed. Some fell entirely, collapse accompanied by the faint hiss of life support suits struggling against exhaustion and dehydration. Others knelt beside them, adjusting straps, providing water from personal rations, murmuring encouragement the aliens could not detect, but that the fallen felt in warmth and pressure and shared persistence. There was no calculation that dictated these acts of compassion, no logical protocol that accounted for them. It was messy, inefficient, human in every sense, resilience threaded with empathy, risk tempered by improvisation, chaos guided by stubborn hope. The overseers cataloged everything, their sensors unable to measure the pulse of defiance that rose from the soil. Each minute, each movement, each unmeasured decision compounded the anomaly. The humans were alive in ways the machines could not predict, thriving not in spite of chaos, but because of it. Broken irrigation, sun-misaligned growth chambers, scattered seed. These were obstacles, yet the humans approached them with improvisation, adaptation, and unrelenting hands. Their movements were a tactile language the aliens could not parse, each action a statement against sterile logic, each failure a lesson learned immediately, memorized, integrated into the next action. They were not efficient, but they were unbreakable. By the end of the first cycle of suns, the colony's fields bore the first stubborn green. Not neat rows, not uniform sprouts, but irregular patterns, a tapestry of life rising from imperfection. The humans wiped sweat and grime from their eyes, hands smeared with dirt and blood, and continued planting. No statistic could describe the probability of this survival, no model could account for its persistence. And the overseers, silent in their distant orbit, felt the anomaly deepen, spread, and pulse like a living thing. The machines had failed. Logic had failed. Order had failed. And in the unmeasured, unquantifiable defiance of fragile hands and ragged hearts, life endured. In the year 2154, amid 50 million souls depending on this network of mechanized farms, humanity reminded the universe of a truth the Empire had never anticipated. Life could not be contained, nurtured, or dictated by perfect systems alone. It required touch, error, persistence, courage, and a stubborn refusal to surrender to inevitability. The humans fell and rose, twisted and burned, laughed and cursed, coaxed and begged, and still, they worked. The overseers could only watch, their instruments blinking in futile comprehension, as chaos produced the first signs of hope. The universe, infinite and indifferent, had met its match in hands smeared with mud and sweat. A faint tremor ran through the soil, imperceptible to machines yet alive to the human touch, and the first sprouts emerged, slender threads of green piercing the sterile dust like whispers of rebellion. They quivered in the harsh light of twin suns, fragile and defiant, trembling in rhythm with the pulse of wind across cracked nutrient trays. The air smelled of damp earth, metallic residue, and the faint tang of sweat from the humans kneeling in the dust, hands smeared with mud and grit, pressing seedlings into the stubborn ground. Each motion carried weight, the careful packing of soil around tender roots, The gentle patting of leaves after storms, the improvisation of water delivery when pumps sputtered or clogged. The humans laughed at small victories, a raw, ragged sound that carried across barren fields, shattering the alien expectation of silence and order. Sprouts survived sudden storms, roots clinging to cracked earth, twisting and bending with stubborn tenacity, while pests appeared unpredictably and were crushed, brushed aside, or diverted through improvisation the aliens could not have imagined. The overseers watched from orbit, sensors spanning the colonies in grids of light, measuring, calculating, and failing to comprehend. Every algorithm, every model, every probability curve predicted failure, yet the humans persisted, guided by memory, instinct, and improvisation passed down across generations. Their hands moved erratically yet purposefully, distributing water in uneven droplets, scattering nutrients by touch, pressing seeds where sensors warned of futility. They dug channels for irrigation with fingers when pipes clogged, patched holes in protective frameworks with scraps of metal, repurposed shattered glass to shield young sprouts from ultraviolet glare. Their bodies bore the strain, sunburned shoulders, scraped knuckles, blistered palms, and faces streaked with grime. Some collapsed briefly in exhaustion, gasping for air, yet others carried them up, repositioned them, lifted water, continued planting. No rational system could explain their endurance. No logical calculation could account for the will that guided them through hunger, fatigue, and the absurdly hostile soil. Green spread like a chaotic constellation across fields that sensors had declared barren, unpredictable in pattern, irregular in alignment, impossible to model. Sprouts leaned toward uneven light, curled around obstacles, and survived in microclimates the overseers' instruments had not even detected. Every day brought new improvisation. When a storm washed away the shallowest roots, humans dug trenches, reshaped soil, reinforced fragile shoots. When pests appeared, they crafted traps from scraps, smoked soil with smoldering residues, or manually separated the invaders from the plants. The process was inefficient, messy, human, and alive. The overseers' instruments recorded everything: humidity, nutrient concentration, soil density, wind vectors, yet none of it accounted for growth. Imperfection itself had become productive, chaotic life emerging where precision had failed. The humans shared resources freely, pooling water, nutrients, and shelter, improvising communal solutions when machines malfunctioned. One carried water for another, transferring it in improvised containers. Another shaded the fallen from brutal sun, pressing a cooling hand against fevered skin. Every action, small or large, was imbued with care, the faint pulse of empathy threading through survival. The overseers, cold and logical, could measure only chemical composition, energy expenditure, and efficiency. They could not quantify the warmth that passed through hands, the reassurance in a shared burden, or the courage that compelled a human to rise again when failure had struck. Roots grew tangled in unexpected ways, leaves sprouted at angles no algorithm had predicted, but life persisted. Each human action built upon the last, a chain of improvisation, a mosaic of tactile intelligence and stubborn resolve. Sprouts survived against odds calculated as infinitesimal. Storms, pests, nutrient imbalances, and exhaustion tested them relentlessly. Yet still, they survived. Tiny green tendrils became small plants became resilient shoots. Every day, the humans measured survival not in efficiency, but in perseverance, in the unrelenting refusal to surrender. Their laughter echoed across barren fields when seedlings endured what no sensor predicted, and the overseers' algorithms sputtered in silence, incapable of explaining the phenomenon. Shadows lengthened under twin suns, stretching across uneven soil and imperfectly planted rows. Dust rose in miniature tornadoes, catching in hair and clothing, rubbing into skin and leaving traces of effort that would not be erased. Hands moved constantly, fingers brushing dirt, smoothing soil, adjusting fragile shoots. The humans paused only to observe, to measure by touch and smell, to memorize subtle irregularities of weather, soil, and plant response that no machine could interpret. They improvised constantly, learning from every failed shoot, every blighted root, and every errant pest. The soil was alive beneath their fingers, responding to chaos rather than algorithms, yielding only to persistence, care, and courage. In orbit, the overseers recoiled in disbelief. Probability models collapsed, simulations failed, predictive matrices dissolved into contradiction. Imperfection had produced life where perfection had failed. Each human hand smeared with mud, each improvisation, each ragged breath was statistical heresy, a triumph of spirit over algorithm. Their persistence was a physical force, shaping Earth where machines had only delivered sterility. The humans' bodies bore the strain of labor and sun, yet their spirits endured, each small act of care amplifying resilience. The overseers cataloged, recorded, attempted to rationalize, but all logic faltered. The anomaly spread. Life had found a way through hands, sweat, laughter, and improvisation. By the end of the cycle, the colony bore visible proof of defiance, scattered, irregular patches of green, rising stubbornly from dust and grit. Tiny shoots bent around broken irrigation, twisted under harsh sunlight, survived pestilence, survived neglect, survived imperfection, and endured. The humans knelt beside them, pressing fingers into soil, tracing patterns no sensor could predict, improvising protection, and celebrating improbable survival. In the year 2154, amidst 50 million souls whose sustenance had been entrusted to mechanized perfection, humanity reminded the universe that life did not follow algorithms, that survival was born not of calculation, but of courage, empathy, persistence, and the messy, glorious insistence of hands willing to soil themselves. The silence of the automated systems was absolute. Metallic conduits hung empty, valves clicked uselessly, and nutrient streams halted midair, leaving faint chemical tang suspended in the filtered air. The hum of life support machinery filled the void, but the heart of the colony, the web of mechanical precision that had sustained billions across Sector 7, remained dead. Heat radiated from idle engines, and the faint vibrations of failed pumps pulsed through steel frameworks like the echo of a heartbeat that had stopped. The overseers moved through the observation decks, recalibrating sensors, rerouting power, reissuing protocols with mechanical precision, yet every attempt faltered. Screens flickered with impossibility, error messages multiplied, and systems that had once operated flawlessly now responded with silence, or worse, corruption. The alien calculations, once infallible, unraveled in a cascade of contradictions. Outside, the colony sprawled under twin suns, barren metal frameworks gleaming dully in the light. Dust swirled in faint eddies around the lifeless harvesters. Where machines had stalled, dry canals remained unfilled, cracked soil unturned, and the air smelled faintly of burnt circuits and dust. Yet amidst the frozen sterility, humans moved. Not with algorithms, not with perfect steps, but with hands smeared in dirt, sleeves rolled, boots scuffed, breathing uneven, faces streaked with sweat, dust, and determination. They carried buckets, trowels, and rags. They dug where pumps had failed, coaxed roots through stubborn dust where sensors had given up, and redistributed water in uneven streams. There was no methodical system, no precise calculation, yet their work unfolded with relentless certainty, each movement improvised yet guided by intuition, honed over centuries. Patches of green appeared where no sensor had predicted life. Small shoots forced themselves through cracks in concrete and nutrient trays, bending toward uneven light, twisting around debris, stretching roots into sterile soil. The humans followed them, hands brushing soil, tracing roots, adjusting fragile leaves, improvising scaffolds from scraps of metal. When water ran short, they carried it from distant reservoirs, sharing it among themselves in unequal measures, ensuring that even the smallest shoot endured. Sweat poured from their brows, dripped from elbows, ran into soil and stitched human effort into every root. Fingers blistered, hands scraped, backs ached, and lungs burned from exertion. But still, they moved, digging canals, shifting soil, bending earth to their will not through perfection, but through relentless persistence. Storms rose suddenly, winds whipping dust into teeth and eyes, tearing at frail green stems. The overseers recorded every anomaly, sensors flashing warnings of potential loss, but humans laughed as they sheltered plants with rags, improvised windbreaks, and pressed soil around exposed roots with hands that knew pain and urgency. Each human action was a defiance of statistical certainty. When one faltered, another rose, handing water, adjusting a shade, or pressing a leaf into place. Life persisted not because it was scheduled, not because machinery delivered it, but because hands refused to relent. The overseers, frozen in orbit, monitored the chaos. They had attempted to quantify survival, to model persistence, to calculate the outcome of every possible intervention, but human improvisation existed outside all algorithms. Every step, every gesture, every shared ration, every effort to repair what the machines had abandoned, was unpredictable. The humans moved in waves, shifting across barren fields, tracing patterns no sensor could predict. Their resilience was physical, mental, and emotional, encoded not in metal or code, but in memory, instinct, and courage. Where machines had failed utterly, humans thrived through disorder, through empathy, and through the audacity of trying when every rational model had declared the outcome impossible. Roots thickened in stubborn dust, shoots spread unevenly in chaotic geometry, and the first small canopies emerged where there had been only steel frameworks and sterile trays. Humans carried fallen comrades when exhaustion took them, adjusted the slope of soil beds, redirected scarce water, and improvised shade against relentless suns. Their bodies bore scars of labor, scrapes, burns, calluses, but their eyes held the clarity of purpose. Every movement was a negotiation with the universe, coaxing life from indifference, bending stubborn soil to fragile hope. The colony became a tapestry of improvisation, a lattice of persistence stitched together with sweat, dirt, and human ingenuity. By the third cycle of suns, entire patches of green had flourished. Canals dug by hands replaced the blocked aqueducts of automation. Roots once starved for nutrients now twisted deep into soil the machines could not reach. Shoots climbed trellises improvised from twisted metal, leaves unfurled under sunlight that sensors had misread, and tiny buds formed where algorithms had predicted only failure. The overseers' calculations crumbled with each new sprout. Their sensors, designed to monitor efficiency and probability, blinked uselessly at the chaotic perfection of persistence. Survival was no longer a function of order. It was a function of courage, improvisation, and the capacity to fail and rise again. Humans rested briefly only to survey their work, wiping sweat from their eyes with dirt-smeared hands, tasting dust and water on their lips, inhaling heat and humidity, sensing life in the tremor of roots and the quiver of leaves. Each moment was a negotiation with fatigue, hunger, and uncertainty. Every breath and motion became a declaration. Life endured not through perfection, but through the terrifying, messy act of trying. When storms came again, they adjusted, repaired, and improvised, refusing to yield. By the time the twin suns dipped toward the horizon, the colony glowed with stubborn green patches, irregular, untidy, human. The metal frameworks of automated harvesters gleamed uselessly among them, silent witnesses to the inadequacy of sterile perfection. In the year 2154, across 50 million souls relying on mechanized sustenance, humanity's hands had transformed failure into life. The overseers, logic shattered, recalculated not in probability but in awe, their algorithms failing to contain the lesson. Survival was not granted by perfection, but earned through persistence, courage, and relentless action in the face of chaos. The universe, infinite and indifferent, had been met not by flawless machines, but by the raw, messy, defiant will of humanity. Life spread through dust and ruin because hands, fragile and flawed, refused to stop, and the stars themselves bore witness to an improbable triumph forged from sweat, soil, and heart. Lightning split the sky above the outer colonies, a jagged silver fist tearing through clouds heavy with electric tension. The final storm roared across barren fields and ruined machines, gusting dust and debris into swirling eddies that stung human eyes and clawed at exposed skin. Rain fell in uneven sheets, lashing against metal frameworks, pouring into cracked irrigation channels, and carrying with it the scent of ozone, wet earth, and the sharp tang of failure. The automated harvesters sputtered and groaned as water flooded circuits, their engines stalling in futile protest, every sensor flickering helplessly in the storm's assault. Somewhere deep in the colony, pumps that had once channeled life now coughed and hissed, useless against chaos, and the overseer's dread, long building across the fleet, reached fever pitch, vibrating through their exoskeletal frames like a low, relentless pulse. They had measured every contingency, calculated every variable, yet the final equation eluded them, unraveling like smoke through the fingers of logic. And still, humanity endured. Hands raw and blistered, knuckles caked in mud, faces streaked with sweat, dust, and rain, they moved with staggering persistence. Fingers dug into soil that had been churned by wind and machine alike, pressing seeds into the earth with intuition, improvisation, and sheer stubbornness. Water was hauled in buckets, shared in unequal dribbles, poured into channels dug by hands instead of machines. Every motion carried weight, every movement a negotiation with gravity, exhaustion, and the violent elements. Sprouts trembled under torrents, roots clung desperately to cracked soil, and yet humans pressed onward, their motions chaotic but resolute, improvising scaffolds from debris, redirecting runoff, and holding seedlings against the wrath of the storm. The storm's roar was deafening, the hiss of rain on metal deafening in combination with the low groan of failing systems. Air was thick with the smell of wet earth, burnt insulation, ozone, and human sweat, each inhalation a mixture of vitality and strain. Fingers rubbed dirt into cuts, wiped moisture from eyes, adjusted tattered protective coverings, and traced delicate roots to check their survival. The humans moved not as a regiment, not as units of efficiency, but as living, breathing organisms attuned to the pulse of life itself. They remembered how to soil their hands, to feel the earth, to coax it into producing where logic could not, where perfection had failed. Every moment of effort was small, individual, yet collectively monumental, a testament to persistence over calculation, courage over certainty, improvisation over protocol. Across the fields, green erupted in patches of irregular brilliance. Crops twisted around fallen irrigation pipes, bent toward sun flecks that pierced the storm's thick clouds, and survived in microclimates the overseers had failed to model. Humans traced the pattern of growth with careful, improvised motions, adjusting fragile stems, propping shoots against sudden winds, separating pest-damaged leaves, and coaxing life from what the machines had abandoned. Where irrigation had failed, they dug trenches, rerouted water, and pressed soil against roots with hands numb from cold, blistered from labor, and slick with rain. In each motion, in each ragged breath, humanity declared that survival was not measured in algorithms, but in persistence and will. The overseer's fleet hovered above, thrumming with calculated anxiety. Their sensors cataloged humidity, nutrient concentration, root depth, and stem angle, yet the results confounded every expectation. Probability curves collapsed in real time, simulations crashed against the wall of reality, and every model of success and failure proved inadequate. Logic had been rendered impotent. The machines had failed, the protocols had failed, and yet life persisted. Tiny shoots, ragged and irregular, had become small plants. Small plants had become resilient clusters, and resilient clusters now stretched across formerly sterile metal frameworks, bending and growing in unpredictable patterns. The humans harvested cautiously, distributing fragile leaves and shoots, saving the strongest specimens to propagate further, their hands careful but unafraid of ruin. Wind shredded remaining protective structures, yet the humans adapted, gathering torn tarps, twisting broken metal into supports, and improvising roofs over seedlings with scraps of equipment and hands that trembled with exhaustion but never faltered. Their breath came in harsh gusts, inhaling rain-soaked air thick with mud and ozone. Yet each exhale was measured, steady, purposeful. The colony itself seemed to pulse with effort, as if responding to the rhythm of the human heartbeat, swaying leaves, shifting water, bending under pressure, but never yielding. Life had become a negotiation with chaos, and the humans were its masters. When the storm passed, the sun returned in fragmented beams, casting light across fields that were irregular in pattern but vibrant with growth. Water pooled in improvised channels, reflecting the sheen of clouds still racing across the sky. Soil smelled faintly of wet roots, metallic residue, and human labor. Humans knelt among the crops, hands pressed into mud, fingers tracing roots, adjusting leaves, harvesting cautiously. Every movement carried memory and intent, the knowledge of failure, of improvisation, of endurance. Every harvested leaf, every secured shoot was a triumph against indifference, a record of the persistence that no machine, no algorithm, no overseer could ever quantify. The overseers watched in stunned silence. Their calculations had failed. Their logic had been rendered moot. Their perfect models of life, designed to contain and predict every outcome, could not grasp the truth unfolding below. Humans, fragile and flawed, hands raw and bleeding, faces streaked with mud, had persisted where perfection had failed. Life had emerged from chaos, from dust, from the ruin of automation itself. The colony was alive, vibrant, and thriving in irregular, chaotic patterns, a testament to the terrifying, beautiful capacity of humanity to endure. Every sensor blinked uselessly. Every algorithm sputtered. Every calculation dissolved in awe. In the year 2154, across 50 million souls relying on mechanized sustenance, humanity had reminded the universe of a fundamental truth. Life could not be dictated by perfection. It required courage, persistence, improvisation, and the unyielding insistence of hands willing to soil themselves. The final storm had passed. The machines lay dormant, and the overseers could only watch as humans harvested, coaxed, and nurtured, rewriting the equation of survival not with logic, but with heart, sweat, and determination. Chaos had been transformed into sustenance, disorder into abundance. The universe yielded not to algorithms, but to the beautifully, terrifyingly human act of trying when everything else had failed. Humanity had survived. Humanity had won.